Right now it's time to catch up with the Sunday papers to see what issues have been raised. Joining us are Phil Barton of the Keep Britain Tidy campaign, morning, and also Stephen Bowman, who you've just seen from Blake, but also you have a background in marketing as well.
I did, yeah. For about 5 years before Blake, I was doing a pretty normal 9-to-5 job in marketing and sales and things like that, so this interests me as much as music.
OK, so let's have a look at the newspaper, Sunday Times, and we've got a story here, which you probably could do good marketing on, actually, about wind turbines. This is really interesting, generating a bonus for homeowners. So what do they do here, Stephen?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, this one example of a guy here, he's put a 30-foot wind turbine in his garden. And the reason he's done that is so that he can generate power to keep his supercar garage warm during the winter, which I think is brilliant. But the serious part of the story is that essentially what he's able to do, he makes money from putting power back into the national grid.
Right.
But he's also getting paid by the government for the power that he uses himself. So it's an incentive to actually use wind turbines, solar panels, and make that power and get paid to use it.
I mean, I suppose the thing is, because they're expensive to put in the first place, so you've got to have the money to make the investment, haven't you?
They are. I mean, this one, for instance, cost him £13,000. So it'll take him, they reckon, around 7 years to pay it off. So you have to stay in your house for a while. But given the housing market at the moment, I think a lot of people probably are.
Do you think that's a good idea, Phil?
I think it is. I'm all in favour. I think it's slightly odd that we're paying the incentives rather than paying for the electricity. It seems to me odd that we don't pay a full commercial rate for the electricity that people generate in their own homes.
This is also kind of leading on from that, the Telegraph as well, you two spotted this story. Wind turbines, but in Turner's landscape. And what they've actually done quite cleverly here is they've actually put wind turbines, I don't know if you can see that if you're watching at home, wind turbines in one of his very famous paintings of Bolton Abbey. Could that really happen? Would you like that sort of thing to happen, do you think, Phil?
I'm all in favour of wind turbines, and my mum will kill me if I get this wrong, because she lives in mid-Wales and she's passionate about where they go. I think we need a much cleverer strategy to put them all together in urban areas, out to sea, and in certain parts of the countryside. We need to generate renewable energy, and this is one of the ways to do it. But just slapping them indiscriminately where somebody wants to apply for them seems to me a daft way of going about it again. Interesting
story here, and this is again from the Telegraph, I think, isn't it? Yes, it's on the Sunday Telegraph, about prisoners, actually. And this particularly, I know you're interested in, Stephen. One prisoner in 11 is an armed forces veteran. That is a striking figure, isn't it?
It gets, in actual fact, in Dartmoor prison, 20% of prisoners are from the armed forces, which is incredible. I mean, there's a wider story here, obviously, in terms of a lot of people get back from conflict, and everybody talks about the physical damage that can happen to soldiers in conflict. And obviously, Blake, for instance, do work with Help for Heroes, where we're raising money, for instance, on the 20th of September, we're doing a concert and involved with Twickenham Stadium to help raise money for that. But the fact is, there's the psychological side as well, which is the bit nobody really wants to speak about. Ever since the First World War, people talk about shell shock as if it's a weakness in soldiers. And it is very, very difficult sometimes, coming out of the army, coming out back from a tour of duty, for soldiers to basically say, actually, this is huge trauma for me. So that's not helping. Yeah, and it is also, it's not just people out of the armed forces with psychological problems as well, is it?
I mean, I think this is symptomatic of perhaps how people with psychological problems are not ignored by the system, but they end up not being treated in the community as well as they should be. And I think this is a particular case, but also in the same story it says another very high category of prisoner are the unemployed. Well, again, people who are on the margins of society may well have mental health problems.
I'm sure people watching at home will be slightly concerned by this one as well. This is about a snooker's charter. Apparently, more than 1,400 civilians now have the right to take your name, address, and issue on-the-spot fines for minor offences. I know that you, with Keep Britain Tidy, some people are able to do that,
yes,
aren't they?
And we support this, but we believe that the people who are able to do it, they need to be uniformed and they need to be properly trained. We are very much against sort of covert surveillance. But actually, it's very hard to tackle some of these minor cases. You need to get evidence to get into court, and we do think it's important that there are eyes and ears out there able to actually pick up the offences as they go on.
What about that? What do you think, Stephen?
I think that what needs to be used is a little bit of common sense. I mean, we were talking about this earlier. If people just explain to people what their actions are, you know, by throwing that onto the ground, by actually going up to somebody and saying, look, you've just made a mess, pick that up and put it in the bin. I think that actually has more effect than somebody going up and saying, right, that's an £80 fine. Because all that does is it makes you hate the authority figure And in a way, that's the rebellion that you don't want within society.
No, I've lost my other paper. Oh, no, here it is, look. I was going to nick yours, Stephen. This again from Sunday Telegraph about an interesting way of getting more people into churches. And what's the idea here? That wine bars are involved, is that right?
I think it's an unusual idea. I mean, the idea is this, that the church traditionally has had, for instance, little cafes and little shops selling religious items and religious books. And now they're saying, well, we have to modernise, we have to become 21st century, so let's put wine bars in. We were trying to, this must be brilliant. Do you have happy hours at these wine bars? Do you get 2 for 1 communion wine or something like this? We were just trying to wonder how on earth this is going to work. And they're going to be with stained glass windows, purple interiors. I mean, I've never seen anything like this in the church before.
It might work, mightn't it, Phil?
Well, it
gets
might do,
people
but
into
it just seems to me, again, you know, sort of, we've bought into this consumer culture and that you can sell anything. It's actually a hearts and minds issue, Faith, and I think it's cultural, it's in the family, it's in society at large, and whilst this may or may not work, it just seems to me it's taking the church down the wrong track.
With that, we will leave it. Phil, Stephen, thank you both very much. Very interesting.
Thank you.
Thanks.